Hello, this is a video instruction on expert curve modeling Addon. There will be no cool models here. Here we will look at the panel, how the functions work, to make it easier for you to understand. In the next videos, there will already be practical models. Don't forget that there are still bugs, and this is an alpha version. Everything will be gradually fixed and expanded. Let's start in order. First, you have the Addon activation button right here. You have pressed the activation button. You have hotkeys here in Preferences. When you press the button, you disable the hotkeys of Blender and enable the hotkeys of Addon so that there is no hotkey conflict. I tried to optimize so that most of the keys, for example, coincide with the Blender keys, and it was easier and faster for you to get used to the Addon. Let's add an object. Let's make it a cylinder. After adding an object, by pressing the G key, it can be moved. It also appears where the 3D cursor is. Right-click with the Shift key pressed, and the object will appear there. Once it appears, you can no longer move it. That is, you can only move it by pressing the G key when adding it. This is a small asset. There are several models represented here. There are models like this one. Once you've added a model, you need to go into one of the modes of operation. To activate this mode, Segments. Let's go to Segments. Here, you have segments. What do they represent? It's a geonode object that combines 4 curves or 3 curves. Right now, there are only segments like this. You have a certain set of functions for each mode of operation. For example, there are functions for segment, functions for curves, and other functions for vertices. You can customize the size of vertices as you like. In the future, you can change the vertex display and more functions will be available. You also have a delete button. You can add any other object. Let's go to the model mode. Turn on wireframe. And you can adjust the resolution of the whole model. This way you will always have an even grid. Control Subdivision. The model mode is a kind of preview mode of the finished model. You can enlarge and reduce the subdivision as you like. Let's add this object and switch to segment mode. Let's turn on the wireframe display to make it easier for you to see. Here we have an object like this. For example, we want to change the resolution. It's a generic resolution, and it is the same on all segments, so there are 4 resolutions in one segment. To change the resolution separately, we need to enable the advanced mode. Now you have enabled the mode, and you have the resolution settings. You can select the segments you want, click on the resolution lock button. Here is the resolution on them, changed individually. Now, to change, you can see that they have 15. Let's change the resolution. You can also choose one and change on one, but then you won't have matching edges. You also have a second resolution. For example, if you want to change the resolution of the other direction, you turn on the second one and change it. Let's delete this model. Now this button is in the Models panel to the right of the ECM object. You should definitely check out video instruction 3. Add a cube. Let's change the resolution here. You'll notice that you sometimes don't have the same direction of resolution. There is a reverse resolution button to change the direction of the resolution. You just need to select the segments that do not match the direction and press the reverse button. Let's go to the segments. Let's see if you change this here to 2, you still have the general resolution running. So it doesn't affect this parameter because you've locked it down, but it does affect the second direction in the general resolution. Let's try it again. For example, let's change the inside and lock it and do like this. Yeah, look, I changed the resolution and nothing changes inside. That's how resolution works. This will also happen if you suddenly decide to block this part. For example, if you want to put a 2 here, everything will change during resolution except the part you blocked. The block is removed in the same way. Just highlight the segments and press the same button to cancel the lockout. Also, for example, you add an object, you go into some kind of mode. How do you move it? I mean, if you try to move something in segment mode with the G key, you won't succeed because a segment is kind of virtual. It's based on curves. So if you want to move something completely, like here, it only applies to primitives or the whole object. You need to go to Curves mode and select all curves of the object, then you can move it with the G key. In segment mode, the origin of the segment coordinates will remain in place because you have not moved the segment. To do this, select the segments for which you want to position the origin correctly, The same with curves in curve mode if necessary. But now, after update 235, you can move the object in model mode. Next, right here below you have features that work in all modes or most modes. Let's turn off wireframe. Move key enables interactive mode. When you enable this button, all add-in keys are enabled. At the moment, it is the Alt-G hotkey. It is with this key that you can move. The idea is that when you move, it pulls up the curves to the object you're moving. Here we're going to turn on Alt-G again. At the bottom, you have the hotkeys, which you can use while working in this mode. You can select axes to move along the XYZ axis. You can also right-click to cancel. Or you could do a reset. What is a reset? It is a reset of the point from which you entered move mode. I recommend working with the move function only via hotkey. It will be much easier for you. The function was disabled for the panel due to inconvenience of use and completely moved to the hotkeys. In the panel only left a shadow of it, so you do not forget about it. This is how the reset worked. It allowed you to restart moving from the anchor to the new cursor position. Move mode works in curves, vertex, and segments mode. Here you can select points or a single point. Press Alt-G and pull the point itself. By default, it moves along the plane without Z-axis. If you select an axis, it will move along it. On different axes up and down. Also works with multiple curves or segments. You can select multiple curves and move only them. The feature of curve mode is that in curve mode, you can select a curve and go into edit mode. You can select the handles and move them however you want. The only thing is, you can't move the endpoints. If you move them, it's either not going to work properly or it's going to break. For example, if we move to this, it's going to break here, see? So the points that are on the edges, you can't move them. You can move the handles, and you can move what's in between. For example, look, we can come in here and do a subdivide. You will have another point, and you can move it as you want. You can pick and choose a vector, for example, to make it more even. If it's not even, then you need to add more segmentation to make it even. Also, don't forget that you can go into model mode to see what it would look like with subdivision. In edit mode, you can move anything except edge points, basically handles or points on a curve. But create points within reason. I don't think if you decide to make the whole model on 4 curves, you will be happy with the result. Better do it by adding segments. If you see the edges of the curve behind the grid, then you don't have enough resolution. You can also go into any other ones, stretch it out like this, and you've got a model with a transition like this. That's why you need a selection menu. For example, You want to select those curves between segments. You can do that and select those curves by going to the Shift-G selection menu. Segments that have common curves, otherwise it will not find such a. So we selected the segments, pressed Shift-G, and selected between. Now we got these curves right here. We want to raise the arc along all the upper segments so that the angle becomes more rounded. Here in Shift-G is the Select Handle selection option. It selects not edge points but internal handles. Now you can press G and Z and lift. You have raised everything up or lowered everything down. Make sure you don't have an intersection. Like here, you see an intersection. Okay, we're all set. Let's take a look at this in model mode. Now you have a soft edge. Let's go back to the curves, selecting again. Shift-G, between, and Shift-G, handle. You probably noticed that you've got scale here. Manipulator controls scale. If you change with Shift held down, it controls the length of the handles. You can make it sharper and clearer by placing the handles closer together. You can see that the transition has become sharper. This will also be affected by other handle type modes. Here, if you do vector, for example, you'll get flat again. You can also choose free. Let's go here through the selection handle to make it faster to select, and you can do it like this. You don't have to do everything. You can do it like this, and you will get some transition from flat to not flat. But of course, you have to make a vector to make it flatter like this, and now you will have a transition from flat to curved. Also, what other excretion modes do we have? We have in this panel, the modes change from the selected mode. These are the lower parts. This is what applies to segments. This is what applies to general. Here we have select curved edges. This means that you will be selecting edges. That is, the edges of the selected segments. So you can do, for example, handles and control such actions. Or you can bring it up. So let's take a look at this. This select curve function just selects curves, all curves that belong to a segment. In the future, I'll probably build it in somewhere to do a better selection. But for now, that's how it works. Let's try to move the segment here. I've shown you here, for example, Alt-G, we move along Z. Let's take a look in model mode. You can navigate without this function, but if you need to magnetize to something or do something similar, you can do it with this function. For example, you can select a segment, press Shift-G, and choose Select Point. Then in Edit mode, all the associated curves and control points will be selected. If there are points on the curve, click on the check mark at the bottom left to move them as well. So now you can move with the G as well. Use the Blender functions, axes, magnets if you need to. Also, see, if you want to move, for example, these parts here, they apply to all modes. So you can also click on Select Point and take it and move it to where you want to expand it. Narrow this part, bring it up, bring it down. There, and things like that. Only one thing when you do this. You should realize that this is the editing mode, and the origin of coordinates will be off to the side. That's why you have to use Update Origin after this manipulation. It will return the origin to where it should be. It is obligatory. It is better not to skip it. Otherwise, other functions will not work correctly. We also have a Select Link function that selects linked parts of an object. If you add a new object in curve mode, it will be added as if you added it in edit mode. And if they overlap with another, the easiest way for you to split them up is to use the Select Link function. This function also works in other modes. You can also select and move it up or down. Don't forget that you can change the resolution at any time, and the bigger it is, the harder the edges will be. You see, we have the Merge Segment function. It is also located in the General panel. It only works in two modes. It works in vertex mode. Here you're doing a merge segment. It kind of sticks one vertex with curves to another vertex with curves. This error is no longer encountered in newer versions. Now look, this merge function merges 2 points. In doing so, it creates triangular segments if the number of points in the segment is reduced to 3. You see that you have an inverted normal. Switch to segment mode and press the normal recalculation button. This error is now rare. If suddenly it flips normals incorrectly, the manual way is to go to the segments mode, enter the modifier, and press the flip normals button. Each segment has such a button. Or select inside the panel that pops up at the bottom. Look what else. There's a point like this here. For example, do you have a curve like here and a curve there? By the way, let's take a look at the model mode. See how many interesting things you can do. I don't know why, but I think you need it. I need it. See, if you take and insert this vertex here, combine them, you no longer have a choice. That choice is moved to the bottom pop-up panel. The two curves are kind of in the same place, and you pick the curve you want to keep and you get a segment like this. For example, you chose the bottom one, and if you want another one, here is the index of the curve. If you have a 1 or a 0, you choose the other one. For example, I have a 0. I choose 1. Here it goes vertically. If I want a different one, I choose 0. It's gone bottom. If you have more options, 3 curves, then you can start from scratch and keep choosing. The main thing is not to exceed the number of curves. Let's create another cube to make it more visible. The merge function also works on curves. That is, you can select one curve and another curve. But note that in both vertices and curve, you can select only 2 objects. Unfortunately, you can't select like this. You can't. Only one. There must be one selected and one active. It will go from selected to active. It's the same in curve mode. You select one thing, select another, press M. M is a merge. It gives you a selection right away, but there's no difference in what you've selected. You highlight something, and you have 2 triangular segments and 1 segment for 4 curves. Don't forget, yes, these are your curves. You can do like this and then look at them in model mode. See, if you have this, you definitely need to recalculate the normals in segment mode. Switch to model mode, and everything will display correctly again. Let's create a circle and move on to the curve functions. Let's start with one highlighted curve. The E key is the extrude function. Now, when you press extrude, you see that your curve duplicates the curve you started with and is flanked by 2 curves. At the bottom, you have tooltips. You select X, you move along X also with other axes. Also, you see here, right-click cancel. Also, you can select multiple click extrude here. You see you have the orientation global. You can press O, and the extrude countdown will be from the active object. Press O again, and it will change. You can also select an individual option. Then you will have a default normal for each extrude individually. The normal is taken from the segment from which extrude is performed. So if you take this one, for example, you will move from it. If it's looking up, the normal will be pointing upwards. You can use individual and select other axes. In this case, it is best to use neither. You can see that you have overlays. The individual ones are not needed here. So it's better to turn off the individual ones so they merge, and then you won't have duplicate curves in each extrude. Look, we got the segments rotated incorrectly. Go to Segments, click Recalculate. Now we've inverted the normal. Let's pick another one. Let's do an extrude up. Let's go, select extrude, select individual, and continue. Let's choose Z. So let's just go to B and Z. Now we've extruded Z. Let's do another extrusion. Select I. Select Z. Why Z? Because this is how the Z normals are folded. They run perpendicular to the plane of the segment. If we make the corners perfectly even, we can use our function merge. We can go into Vertex, select these two vertices, and click Merge. Let's turn on the hotkey mapping. Select the 2 points and click Merge. After that, you can merge them into one. Also, a few words about Extrude. You can still use Extrude in free curves. For example, you have a curve, let it be like this. Let's make a subdivision here, 2 subdivisions. Let it be something like this. Here you have a shape like this. Take it, no matter how you put it. Now you've created it. You might want to apply rotation and scaling. And you can use Extrude to do that. Go to the curves, select them, and press E. And you can extrude. And you'll get a section of several curves at once. This is one way to use the Extrude tool. You've created a shape right away, but you need to add resolution because there's not enough resolution here. Also, if you want to delete this, you can just go to Segments and you'll have a delete button. This is the X key. But if you need to save the curves so they are not deleted, you have the Save Curves function. Then when you go to the curves, they will remain. But we don't need them. We'll delete them. Also, look here we have the Fill Curve button. How does it work? You've selected 4 curves that have their edge points aligned. 1 point here, so they're connected to each other. Then they're going to close. If you just make 4 curves, they'll close too. If you select like this, you get 3 curves with common points. The fill curve will then complete this curve here to close with a segment. Here you need to select the 4 curves you want to close and execute Recalculate Normal. What else do we have in the fill-in curve? Look, here's another option. You have 2 curves here. You want to close them. Click on the fill curve as well. You see, you've closed them into a triangle, but you can close them as a quadrilateral. Check the fill curve 3 or 4 box. Select 4, and it will be constructed as a quadrilateral. If you left the check mark on, the next time you apply it, here's the F button, the fill curve will be applied, and then the check mark will be on by default. And that's how you can complete your object. Don't forget, if you don't highlight this curve, they won't merge. Here, by the way, you can see right away that I didn't select it, and I have them overlapping. First of all, we're going to recalculate the normal so that we can invert it. We have a double curve here, see? Let's move on to the curves. Here they are. There are 2 curves. How do I remove it? You can't remove it by hand. If you remove it, you'll tear it off one of the segments. You have a clean curve. Look, let's say if you don't do that, look, you have one segment. This is from one segment. This covers another segment. That's why you have to do a clean. Pick one like this, for example, or pick another one so that they merge. Let's destroy something here. Let's do an extrude. Now see that the fill curve can also be closed like this. That is, two curves that have no points in common. This is where we press F. If he did this, if he flipped it the wrong way, there's a reverse curve button. Next, you can do this on 3 curves. There's also a button called Bridge. What's the difference between Bridge and Fill Curve? Fill Curve, it closes all curves, no matter if they are free without a segment or with a segment. Here you have a Bezier. This is another way to make a segment out of nothing. We duplicated it, selected 2, and pressed Fill Curve. And it closed. So we've got these curves here. And we're good to go. The bridge doesn't work that way. Bridge needs segments. It only works with curves that have segments. So, for example, if we want to complete the bridge here, we press here, it will try to maintain the angle of the curve. That is, the curve was in this direction, so he extended it. Most of the problems with inverted normals have already been fixed. Take a look at the fill curve function. We selected the curves. Click Fill Curve, and you can see how the segment is closed. So here we have an even curve. Here it's curved, and here it's a flat curve. There is a line or duplicate here, meaning if you check the box, it will take the duplicate from here. She'll try to make them the same. Let's try it here. Let's remove this segment here and try to build up this curve here. Here, look, he did it. It should be constructed just like this curve. Let me turn off the face orientation for now, so it doesn't get in our way. You can also select more than one to remove. We'll remove some of them so we can see. Look, here's another variation of the fill curve. Press F. Here it's built as a square. We can fill in the triangular segment. If there is a common point, it will terminate at 3. We can also do 4 and make a duplicate. Then it will try to make the same duplicate curves that are opposite each other. The bridge also has a triangle closure function. If there is a common point, the bridge will also complete one curve with a bend. If the fill curve was like this, the bridge with segments will be like this with a curved part. You can also control this curved part by going to Select and Handle using Scale Control. Here, so it catches my eye for some reason. Well, you can also just take all of this and make a vector. Then you'll just have it all flat. You can make it smaller. You can make it bigger. You can make it however you want. We also have a replace curve. What's a replace? Let's look at this thing, for example. We've made a curve like this. Selected it active, and clicked replace. We've duplicated the curve. You can do it a little bit differently. You can make, for example, any other curve. It should be an unclosed curve. Let's just apply the vector and do the subdivide. Bring it up to the top. Let's place it on the arc. Here we'll apply scaling and rotation. This is the shape we have here, yeah. We just take these curves that we need, and we want it to be like this. We just click replace, and we just kind of add these curves here. If we zoom in on the mesh now, we should be able to make it work. It's kind of like this kind of thing. We can also do it right here. Replace it. There, and you see it's gotten better. But of course we can't do that here, so we have to do it like this. New versions have added a curve rotation function that performs this function. Okay, so we're done with the curves. Let's move on to the segments. We have a function, duplication and separation. Let's pick segments and try to separate them. Selected, press the axis and pulled back. It also works through the keys in an interactive format. It's kind of like a function separates the selected segments from the other part. Now you can make a bridge. make some kind of fill curve. Look, I've got too much of a bend. You probably have a grid crossing here. What does that mean? You select these curves right here, press Alt-C, and reduce the curvature because it's too stiff. It's overlapping each other. Now, if we go in here, look at how much mesh is here. Let's reduce all the mesh. Here we can also close F at the bottom. Go to Alt-C and reduce the curvature. Recalculate the normals if we got it wrong somewhere. The same thing could be done here, but we'll do it, of course. Bridge. You can do it right away like this. Alt-C. Reduce all at once. Now after that, we go in here. Now we have a model like this. We also have a duplicate function. You can select segments like this. You should have an active segment. It just duplicates your segments with all the curves, and you can move those segments around. You can also do other things like bridge there, create obscure shapes, whatever you want. This one was fine, but we'll restore it. Pay attention to how the grid should be connected. For example, you can't select everything yet. I'm still working on the gone function. So it's better to do it this way with segment completion. So this is how I did it. After that, I take the 4 pieces and put them together. Let's go into the model now. 4. Let's look at the mesh. Now look, the mesh here is very dense probably. You can see the mesh here. You can smooth it out a little bit. So go to curves here. Go to handle here, do a little bit to the center so that the grid is a little bit wider from there. There you go. And the grid immediately lays down better. I'm not doing the bottom. That's it. Okay, what else do we have? I haven't shown you how to do apply. See, you've got a lot of segments and vertices and stuff. You can click the apply button. You will delete everything and only the object itself will remain. It doesn't have a subdivision, but you will already have a default subdivision. Another thing you can do is you can select only the part you want. For example, I need to apply this. Let's not do this. I just like this part we clicked. I forgot that you have to use this in segment mode. So you go into the segment and select what you want. Here, and only here, you need an active object. Be sure to click duplicate, and the part you selected will be applied. Of course, with the same grid that you installed. That is, let's turn on the wireframe total. If you need less, you can make the grid smaller. Select again the part you want. Let's go with this part this time. And make a duplicate and see here's the part you need. How do you transfer your object to another Blender file? This might be of interest to a lot of people because it's not obvious. Here's select segment mode. Select what you want to transfer. Here we decided to transfer everything. It's in segment mode that you copy your object, open a new Blender file, empty or with anything, but we're doing it in a blank Blender file, paste it in here. You put it in, and you, of course, now you have no collections in, everything is a mess. You select our add-in and click on the plus right here. Don't highlight anything, just like this, click on the plus sign. Now you can proceed further. You have all the modes and you have transferred to another file. This is how manual transfer works. This is how the add-on works. The functions that I haven't shown, I will show in the next lesson. Thanks everyone for watching. See you in the next video.